In this video, we're going to talk about session management. We just got done talking about cookies, which provide a way to store key value pairs on the browser, in the client's browser, that are sent to the server with each request. This is often coupled with session storage on the server side. So if we want the server to actually save data about some particular user, some state for the user, like is the user logged in, then we need to have session storage. So the key difference here we're looking at is on the server. How do we store it on the server? And we can have these key value pairs going into a database, a file system, or in this case, we're just going to use an in-memory store, meaning it's just sitting in the process memory for the running application. We're going to see that it uses a session ID to look up these key value pairs. So you may have one key value pair, like we had message last time. You may have many. It's going to look all of them up using a particular session ID. Let's go ahead and start by running our demo, and then we'll take a look at, we'll pick it apart and see how it's actually working. So I'm going to go to my increment endpoint here in Google Chrome, and first I want to clear out this junk that I have left over from my old demo. So I just did the cookies demo. I have this sitting in here. Normally you'd never get in this weird state where you have leftover sort of junk garbage data from some website, because they're all running production website. But when everything we're running is just localhost 3000, you might end up with some extra CRUD in here you need to get rid of. You can just go in here, right click, and delete. So especially if you're working on login and authentication stuff and you find yourself in a weird state, it can be helpful to go to your cookies and manually go and just clear that out and start fresh. So I know we're at a fresh start here. We have no cookie set for localhost. I'm going to visit increment. Let me make sure I'm running first. So we've hit our breakpoint for increment, and it's going to have this session object now. So again, on our request object, now we have a session object on that with properties for whatever variables we want. So this count is just something I made up. You could have request.session.user. We're going to see that quite a bit. In this case, I just want to attach a new variable that I've made called count to it. We haven't set this yet because it's the first time we've hit the page, so we're going to hit this endpoint here. So this is just a little counter application that's incrementing a counter on the server side every time you hit the page. And we'll just return what is the current count. So current count is 1. Now, if we're using sessions, we have to keep track of which user is accessing the page. So it's going to use this session cookie. It just set this, and this connect.sid, that's session ID. And this value here is just going to be some long random string value. Here it is down here. This just is, it's a unique ID. That's all it is. So if you were to get on your machine and access this running application, if this was a deployed application, you would get some different session ID, and it wouldn't match what we're looking at here. That way, when we reach the server the next time, I'm going to hit that endpoint again. It knows how to get this session object just for me by looking it up on that key. So my request.session object will not look the same as yours, because what this is doing is looking it up based on that session key and pulling back just my values. So it's a way to isolate values per browser. So I could even imitate the same thing if I were to open a different browser like Firefox and run my application. That would have its own session because it's stored per cookie. So per domain, per web browser. So let's let this run. This time we do have a count. That count 1, it fetched from the session store. So most of the time this is going to be a database. It's not going to be in memory. So you will actually have this stored in a database somewhere. But this time we're just going to keep it simple and run it in memory. That's what this implementation here, Express Session, is just an in-memory store for session. So it went and fetched the value that was there. That was 1. Now we're going to update it to 2 and send back that 2. And we can run the same process as many times as we wanted. It went and fetched count. It looked up my session key that I sent, the session ID. It fetched my particular value of count, which was currently 2, and updated it to 3. Now just to prove how this works, I actually am going to open this in let's do Internet Explorer here, or Edge. So I'm going to hit increment. This time count is undefined. That's because in Microsoft Edge browser it has its own session ID. Let's pop this open and figure out what that is. Let me pause and find things here. Edge has this set up a little different than Chrome. Okay, I ended up switching to Brave so I could find this a bit easier. And we look at our session ID within this browser, and it ends in WPUO. But if we look back in Chrome, we can see it ends in JEQU. So 2 different session IDs, 2 different session values. It's just doing a lookup on this key on the server and getting the count associated with this particular session key. The last thing we're going to do is clear this out using clear. So I'm going to clear my session. I can use this session.destroy if I'm using this library that we're using, and it's just going to do 2 things. It's going to unset the session cookie, so it'll blow this cookie away, and it also on the server in memory or in the database, whatever we're using for session store, is going to get rid of the count. So we don't want this stale orphan value just sitting around taking up space. We want to clear it out when we're done. So let me call our clear endpoint. Okay, we'll just let it go. And let's check our cookies now. Okay, we do have our session cookie, but the session should be destroyed. If I go back and run my increment, my count is undefined. So it'll get reset back to 1. This particular implementation was leaving the session cookie there. Sorry for the stumble there. I was expecting it to clear that out, but it looks like this does keep the cookie in memory. It just cleared out the actual data on the server side.